Monday morning huddle. I have two in the room here in South Oklahoma City. I don't know if I got anybody else out there, but I might have somebody watching eventually. We're talking about the two-step process to a listing appointment so that you don't have to know everything on the first one. So 2 steps, listing appointment, 2 steps initially. Eventually, I want you to be able to go out in 1 step and do it all, because it's more efficient. It's less time. You don't have to organize their lives twice to get them together to sit down with you. So that's the best. But right now, we're not ready for that. So it's just remember, could I go out? Leslie said, I want to sell my house. Could you go out and be friendly and interested and observe and look and just ask questions? Well, how long has this been like this? How long have you lived here? What do you enjoy the most about this house that you didn't know about when you bought it? Just things like that, just curious. Now, I got some questions for you that already built. I'll show them to you. I got a thumbs up over here.
I'm going to have to write all these questions down.
That's right.
No. You can, but there's tons of material that you can print off.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to show you where to find that. That's something we haven't done yet. And Leslie's, like I said, she's 6 months ahead of you at part-time. So about 2 months in full-time world. But she's far enough ahead to have transactions and have had questions. Had a question this morning. Are we still meeting at 10? That's a fair question. That covered about 8:30. Yes. And so we address it. So is it making sense that right now, even until you're real comfortable with your pricing section, because step 1 is go investigate what is the scenario. Why are they even thinking about, why am I here? You could ask that question. Why am I here to yourself? You might even ask them. Why am I here? You asked me to come and take a look at your house thinking about moving. And at the end of the day, what I want you to be able to do on that first step is identify their primary objective. What needs to happen that they are hoping for. And so, they may say, well, we need to sell this house in order to buy this house because I want Johnny in that school by August. All right. When selling the house is not why you're there. It's to get Johnny in school by August. That's why you're there. And you'll have to remind them along the way more than once when they're wrestling over a $250 question about a refrigerator staying or not, or fixing some repair that they already have. That's their problem. They just discovered it though. We got to bring it back and say, okay, now is this a big enough problem to stop us from getting Johnny into school by August? So that's why you need to know that. But by the time you leave, I want you clear on that. I want them clear on it. Because ultimately we got to bring them back to it from time to time to make sure they got some perspective when it comes down to littler decisions that they're making in order to get there. And sometimes, yes, $250 is enough for me not to let Johnny in that school. Got everything else done. This is all that stands in the way. Fine, I respect that. Now I know the size of I know how important it is to get Johnny over there. About $251, not $250 or whatever, something, or $249. So anyway, that's what I want you to remember. 2 steps. Don't worry about the second step. You come back though and say, okay, I've met these people. Here's their primary objective. Here's when they need to be moved if they want to, that kind of a thing. It's going to be probably subject to what can I get out of this, which you're not there to answer yet. You're just there to see. That's right. They may say, well, that's what they always kind of want to know. Well, how much you think we can get? And that's it. Well, I'm doing step 1 of my process here. Let me help you understand how this works. I come out initially and interview and assess the need. Then I go back to my office now that I've seen the house and I can describe it and know what I'm selling. Then I go find data in our market information to see if I can compare it to something that did sell in the last 6 months or less. And so that's what I go back and do. I'll go back and do my research to see if I can find something to support a certain figure. That is based in current active properties, stuff that's under contract currently, maybe hasn't closed, and then stuff that's actually closed where somebody literally bought it, closed, and they live in it or it's investment or whatever it is. So that's step two. So I appreciate the question. I anticipated you'd ask it. But at the end of the day, I'm not here to answer that one yet. I am here to see what you have. Here's something to remember. It's a fool that tries to price something they haven't seen. I don't care how many you've seen around it. You might have shown 10 houses up and down that block last week. You have a sense of what houses go small to large and lower end to price, upper end, but you haven't seen this. And so them describing it, oh, it's an excellent, perfect condition. That's an objective point of view. Let's go see what perfect looks like to them, and then go from there. But that's what I want you, just in your mind, your philosophy is, I never price anything that I don't see. Here's the next one. What do you charge? What is the fee you charge to come out and do this? Thank you for asking. What time are you available for me to take a look at the project? I'm not there. You can't price your fee without seeing what the project is either. So those
pricing your fee, you're meaning like you can't say what your percentage is?
That's right.
Okay.
What am I going to charge?
Okay.
We have some customary fees for a certain amount of work, but ultimately you cannot really price that until you've seen the house. You could say, well, I typically charge 5, 6, 3, whatever percent. Commissions are a negotiable matter. And we have some customary things. And then if you get below a certain fee that you're offering selling agents, you might not get anybody to look at it. So that is an important question, but let's establish what it's worth. And then I'll establish what the project, what kind of a project this is. If you're asking me to build a Ferrari, price is different than if you're asking me to build a Ford Pinto. You could put it that way. I mean, it just depends on what the project is. But for you guys, I just want you to, in your minds, not answer the question until you've seen it. It's an invitation to come and see that house. If they don't want you to come out, they just want you to throw a figure out there, then I'd give them a $10,000 range and say probably between here and here, depending on when you sell it. That's part of it. Are you selling now or 6 months from now? That's why I need to come out and find out what the situation is. Because 6 months from now, the comparables might be different. I can't predict what they're going to be. Somebody who might have a fire sale down the street that says, I got to get out of here. And they undersell it. And now you've got that comparable in the neighborhood you have to deal with. That hasn't happened today, but it could happen. And if it does, then I'll be able to talk to you about it then. So that's what.
I've been on 4 of these scary ones. And one of the things that helped me is I said, it's no charge for me to come out and visit with you. And that kind of set them at ease. And it opened the door for me to come on out. So they were like, well, we don't have to make a decision right now. She's coming for free, That's
excellent, Leslie. I mean, it's really excellent. Because here, what you want to do is just take the concern out of the public. Christy, you'll be such a blessing to the room because you're the public, really. You don't have this vast amount of real estate experience yet. So that right there would put you at ease for her to say, listen, there's no obligation to charge for me to come out and take a look at the project. You're asking me to price it. You're asking me a little bit about compensation that we might ask. And so I appreciate what you're asking me. And it's fair questions. I need to come out and see what I'm actually dealing with.
Because I think sometimes people think if you come out, they have to sign with you. And if you just say, no charge, I'll just come out and visit and we'll see. And they're like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Exactly. Now that's why the 2-step one is, because initially you're just coming out. Here's what I'd love you to have the attitude of. I'm not going out to see if I can get a listing. I'm going out to see if I want one. I mean, right now I have no listings, no signs, nothing, but I'd still love you to ask, at least have the question, do I want this project? Are we compatible as far as people are concerned? And then is this property a project that I want to take on? If it's in, some 200 miles from here, I don't know if you should take it on, even if you got a license to do so. So that's some of the just fundamental things. Now,
Okay.
let's look at where do we find these forms. First of all, I want you know, and Leslie, you've been there a few times. Have you, Christy, ever logged into this? Oh, come on, wake up. It's going, there it comes. Let me turn this light off. I just like to be able to do it. I like to do this.
Yeah, let's go.
Because you can see it better.
Yeah.
But have you logged in here yet?
Yes.
All right.
It makes 0 sense to me, but I have logged into it.
Good, good. I know your profile's not 100%. There's, things that doesn't matter. But if you can get to here,
Okay.
all the forms, you're asking, how do I do this? Right under little old My Transactions right here. That is where you'll find every possible form, listing forms, sales forms, everything. It's right under that link. So I understand I'm going to be very sensitive to you. You're saying, I'm not tech savvy.
Not at all.
But could you find that? Could you put your mouse right there?
That I can.
She knows what a mouse is. Let's give her some credit over here. She said I'm not tech savvy, but she knows what a mouse is. Let's take that transferable. Yeah. Let's see. Let's see. Here for your clients who to work with. You have. I'm not going to go there now. I'm busy. Okay. So when you click on that, My Transactions,
Okay.
then you have this thing called .loop. It's a software. But I like you to think of this as a big old file cabinet. And it's just got files in it. The loop is a file. And .loop is the file cabinet. So the software, you're used to logging into something to keep track of who's got what glasses and all that kind of stuff and what the prescriptions are and all that kind of thing. Well, this is kind of that. It's just, here's where you go now. I mean, I got a few loops built. Transactions, there's one that I don't know where it came from, can't remember. I've got right here, post-license class. I don't use this anymore, but this is a place that I stored. This is a folder in a file cabinet.
Okay.
When I click on the folder, I grabbed it out of there. I opened it up. Susanna's smiling face is right there.
Your chin.
And then my chin, that's the best part of me. I put it on. But right here are all the forms that I use to teach that class. And I can move them up or down, put them in order I want to put them in. And these happen to be in the order of the post-license class when I teach that class. Now, the problem with this group is some of them are out of date now. And so, but that's a folder. I took the folder out and I opened it up, and that's what's in it. Look here. All I did was take this out and open it. And there inside it were these forms right here. Does that make sense so far?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
It's like a customer folder. That's kind of how I had it in my mind. You're either the customer's a buyer, the customer's a seller.
Yeah, and so you were dealing, just Friday or Saturday, whenever it was, Friday I guess it was, with what to put in the wet folder. But we got compliance people that are making sure that we have our T's and crossed and I's dotted. And so if we're messing something up as far as the protocol is concerned, you can't hurt anything. It's just fix it if you need to. But some of you are moving faster than we're covering things. And frankly, for me, it's what I told Leslie. You need to talk to Susanna, talk to Brittany, the person that's saying, I need this or that, literally talk to them. That means we got to actually dial the phone. And sometimes we are so used to not dialing the phone, we just don't even think about it. Gosh, I guess I could just talk to her.
So you mean if she's filling, or one of us is filling something out and something's missing, somebody will let us know and we just need to contact that person.
And they'll say, you don't have this, you need to get a copy of that. So like you said, you're not going to mess anything up, and there's somebody going to tell you don't have everything.
Yeah.
So you can kind of relax.
So what you've got here, and all of these what I've got built here, and I'll show you that you've got it too, it's just that I've got this class built. But ultimately, any form, residential sale, that's a purchase contract, 2015 version, it's out of date. I could still use it, but when I click on it, up comes the purchase contract. So now what I did is took out of the file folder what I'm looking for. And I laid it on the table, and I could begin from here to just start filling it out. Click on here, put the address in. Click down here if that's a check mark. So I'm just, instead of just with my pencil doing it, I'm just going down the line and marking what's relevant or not. And then when I get done, I can save it. But this is kind of how we fill in the forms. And so this is one of the forms, and then you get down here, and here's the purchase contract. It's very close to the same thing as we got right now. I'm not using this because it's a 2015 version. We have a February 2018 version. It's very similar, but there are a couple of things like this blank right here is no longer there. And I made a note on this one that in February 2015, the blank's going away. So that in case I happen to pull it up, show somebody. And I've put in here customary. So what you've got, I don't know if I printed it all. I got several versions of this, but what you've got in your hands here is just a blank of that. And in fact, the first two pages are just the expense sheets. We'll go over those a little bit. And then I got a page with formulas in it. But when you get back here, there that page is. And this one's got the 2016 version in it. Because I ran these, this is a profit share company. And down here, you see at the bottom of the page, when you're looking down here, you're looking for, that's this.
Did I pass it?
Yeah, good pass.
It's on page 4.
About 4 pages left. Okay, there it is. So that's what you're looking at. And in this one, I've not filled in these blanks here. But I have underlined every place where it says there's an expense.
Okay. Because
I'm tired, this basically is an expense sheet.
this is for the
buyer's
agent to fill out.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got a buyer.
They call it a lot of different things, and it's not what it says on this. So just kind of familiarize yourself at the top of this, because everybody that's in the state calls it a ton of different things, and none of it's that.
Yeah, Oklahoma Uniform Contractor Sale of Real Estate Residential Sale. What did this thing call it? Let me back it up a notch and see.
I kept looking for what people were talking about, and it was actually this.
Yeah. It was called residential sale. So that's kind of and the first page there was pardon me?
Can I write on this?
Oh yeah, that's your notes and stuff.
Okay.
But that's why I'm handing it to you. So you can make notes, and then I want you to carry that with you where you have it with you all the time, especially if you're going to be working with a buyer or seller, because ultimately it's a help sheet and just some of the forms. First thing I want you to do, just read this thing. At some point, read them. Now I'm going to go over them line by line at some point. Post-license class, I literally go over the whole thing line by line. Explain what goes in the blanks and why, and what's in between the blanks, which is actually more important.
Okay.
People eventually, you get where you're good at filling in the blanks because you know what the blanks are for. But people after about 3 years forget to read or know what's in between the blanks. And like I said, this year we changed a few of the blanks. And whereas a year ago, or even February 14th, the seller paid the mortgage inspection report. And on the 15th, the buyer paid it. A little thing, $120. But that shifted on that day because the form changed. So those are little things. Now, you don't have to unlearn what was. You just learn what is. That's the beauty of being brand new. You don't have to go back. However, when I show you some of these forms, and they're out of date a little bit, I'll point out what changed so you're not altogether unfamiliar with what was before. Because somebody could pull an old one up and print it out, and it says something a little different than the new one. If you miss it, it's $120. It's probably not going to kill anybody. But ultimately, that's
120 out of the realtor's pocket?
No, 120 out of the buyer or seller, depending on which one you use. The one you got in your hands, the seller would be paying that 120. If I pulled the brand new one up, the buyer would be. So if you're working with the buyer, it'd be good if you estimated on your estimate of expenses that the buyer's paying it. In this case, I think I've got rid of
What is
the
that last one for?
Thank you. That's my question.
mortgage inspection report. Let's see, let me find where it is. Actually, on these, it's not even listed on the buyer one. This is a version I put out before the 15th. It is on the seller one. If you go to the second piece of paper back, the top of the page, it says mortgage inspection certificate. Second piece of paper. This is a piece of paper, and that's one. Right here, mortgage inspection certificate. $120 until $215. Then it goes away for the seller, and then it becomes expense on the buyer's side. So I can get you bored down, and that's why, you know, when you get started, just to see if the buyer wants a house. If they want the house, we'll sit down and help you. One of us, somebody will sit down and help you with filling out these forms, or help you get us, you know, with whatever. Leslie didn't have to help a lot. She figured out a lot when in there because she studied these forms before she ever had a buyer to work with. But she had plenty of questions. But she filled out a whole bunch of this. She knew how to put it. When it said date, she knew what to do. When it said buyer's name, she knew what to do. When it said seller's name, she kind of figured that out on her own. And signatures, kind of figured that out. Earnest money, kind of figured that out. Day of closing. So she just went down this thing. So I'm going to, like I say, this is an overview here. I know where you're going. You say, oh, I want to know everything about every blank.
I know, my husband keeps telling me to quit trying to eat the elephant.
Yeah, just take a bite today. But now when you open this up, you don't have a smiling face, but you could put it here. You could put a picture in there if you wanted to. But anyway, it's just the document. So these are my post ones. Let me go back to the, you know, just the loop before this. When it opens up, I'm just in this smiley face world right here. When I've clicked on that, this is just loops that I've built, which is could be transactions, file folders of transactions I'm working, or a group of file folders that I want to use, forms I want to use. But usually I get over here and I slip over here next to the people. This one, the templates. And that's where you could go right now. When you go there now, you have, let's go there.
So that's where you go to build in?
It's where you would go to build the purchase contracts.
Blank.
Yeah, it's the blank forms. It's all the current blank forms. So if you click here and you go to residential sale, it will have the February 18th, 15th, 2018 version that you just use it. So templates, the little thing right over here. So you're not going to spend a lot of time on these others probably, but this loop one with the smiley face and this template one, those two you'll spend time on. Because where I'm clicking here, I'm going to what they're calling templates. And down here are all the various forms, contracts and forms, broker relationship class. I have a class that I built mine. So you can customize this and create your own. But even if you haven't created your own, listing documents. I'm going to go list a house. It's residential property. There's a file folder full of every listing document that you probably knew, including a checklist. Let's just go there.
Okay.
Listing documents, clicking on it. And right at the top is a listing checklist.
So I can print that out and take that with me?
Yeah.
Just gives me a list of questions?
I'll just click on it.
No, it's the documents you need.
Yeah, it's just the documents you need to complete a listing, to get a listing completely done. So I clicked on it, and there's a listing checklist right there. And you put the address and your name in. And this checklist with the following required documents is what goes into the folder for the office. The office is required to have the folder. And so, anyway, so there's the listing agreement, disclosures, the tax records, the expense sheet, the property condition, lead base if it's, you know, relative, and so on. But these are the documents you would need filled out and turned in once you're done listing a piece of property. So in this folder, you got a checklist. I mean, I'm just going to show you. I'll go back to the folder.
You said once you're done listing a property. So I'm confused kind of on the timeline. Sorry, you didn't catch that?
No.
So I've talked to the people, they're gonna list it. This is all the stuff I need to get done, and then I have 2 days to get it on the MLS and stuff.
Yeah, once it's actually listed.
And I do this paperwork stuff first.
Yeah. Yeah, in other words, they say, you did your step one. You went out to see why they're moving, gather information as to when they, what's the scenario? You were impressed. And then you came back and say, okay, now what do I do? And that's when somebody, some of us, either over the phone or, and I'd like you to practice this now, because that's what I just showed you a while ago in my little smiley face world. Those were practice scenarios, some of them, where we just made up a buyer or made up a seller. We went to the listing forms and we just found them. We went there and we said, well, what's this one? Because we need all of these in there. These are the ones that are on the checklist. So I just opened this one up and I said, well, I already got the checklist. What's this? It says I got to fill it out. And I'll click on it. And now you have that form in front of you. And we fill it out. We just check. In this case, it's a sales agreement that we're getting ready to do. Or if it's a listing, you go down a listing, well, listing agreement. We just check the one that applies. And then this is the Broker Relationship Act. Just the law requires us to disclose to the people that we're working with what the relationship is, in other words, or what our responsibilities are. Honesty, exercise reasonable skill and care. That's why we have training. Because you could say right now, Christy, I cannot exercise reasonable skill and care yet. I got 90 hours in, and I still can't do that. And the dang law requires it. Right up here. Let's just look at it. Treat all parties to the transaction with honesty and exercise reasonable skill and care. That's actually the law, not a nice suggestion. So we have to disclose our duties and responsibilities real. That's why I want you to go find this and read this stuff, just to get a little bit familiarity with it. Your pre-licensing class covered it, but I mean, it means nothing until you get in the real world and start understanding, and then confidentiality is in here and all the the variety of that. Now, I'd say I spend time on this stuff over time, but there's just one place to check up here. Is it a buyer broker agreement, a sales agreement, a listing agreement? Those are probably the only ones you're ever going to check, or very rarely.
So obviously listing brokerage, if I'm going to list a house.
Yeah.
And what's the difference between sales with a buyer brokerage?
Buyer brokerage agreement is this is a listing agreement to list a buyer to work with you exclusively.
Sure.
So
okay.
Here's one. You got a listing agreement that says I'm going to list we are going to work together exclusively to market your property. I'm going to list it. Okay. The buyer agreement says I'm going to work with you, Mr. Buyer, exclusively to find you a house. It's just like the listing agreement, except it's for a buyer instead, to say we're going to be loyal to each other. We're not going to cheat on each other. X number of weeks to get till we get this done. But I mean, that's literally what that is. It's just the buyer brokerage agreement is just a listing agreement where we're just saying, Mr. Buyer, we are going to commit to each other to work together, and you're not going to go find another realtor while we're working together. We'll have a binding agreement here. Now, 40-some% of the time they do that.
What does that do? Do you guys do that? I mean, someone says, I want to go look at homes. You have to fill this out before you go show them?
You can.
You can.
Oh.
It depends on if you know them or not, your relationship with them.
It's not required. Here's the number. 43% of people across America fill that out and use it and have a loyalty agreement. Our top salespeople person in Oklahoma, 500 closings a year, will not show you a house until you've signed this.
And will tell you that they will not, that they're not allowed to, by their boss, who is Eric, give you access to the property without signing that, because therefore they know exactly who they're dealing with, and that's their rule.
Yeah. So, but here, you say, I don't want to do it. Well, then don't do it. But don't be upset. Don't come holler at me if you go running out to a for sale by owner and bought that. Run out to new construction and bought that and just went around you because you didn't have an agreement with them. It's okay.
How do you present that to the buyer? I mean, if they call you and they say they'd like to go look at homes, how is that presented? Well, I need you to sign this paper.
No, come, let's meet me at the office. Let's sit down and take a look at what you're looking to find. I need to find out what you must have, because we don't just go out there. We got 8,000 options as far as what I could show you. I don't think you probably want to look at all 8,000 of them. So let's go, come in and meet me at the office. So with buyers, I'd like you to meet that at the office. Just use one of the conference rooms and sit down with them and say, okay, tell me what needs to happen here. Again, needs analysis. What's their objective? so that later on, I can pull them back to that objective and say, I know that this refrigerator issue is a couple $100 that we're wrestling with, but let's remember, we're moving because, and that's the thing we got to stay focused on. I'm here to help you stay focused on your objective while you get caught in the minutia over here and make sure you get some perspective. But just meet with them, and then that's a conversation, in that meeting, just around the table over there. Now, tell me what you're looking for. And some of our training in Ignite and other places, we basically say, I want to know, what are your must-haves? I suspect you have at least 5.
On there somewhere?
Is your 5 must-haves?
5 must-haves. Got to be in this school district, got to have this much space, got to have this many garages, got to have this many bedrooms. This fenced yard. I've already covered 5 right there. And that's the fundamental. Then we'll go to, well, all right, what would be nice to have? Not absolute, but nice to have. Let's talk about 2 or 3 of those. Well, it'd be kind of nice if there was a place set in the back, or a pool, or a corner lot, whatever, nice to have. But that's before we ever go out. But in that conversation along the way, we said, I'd like to visit with you a little bit about how this all works. Maybe you've bought other properties, have you? And have you had a good experience, or have you had a bad experience? Get into that conversation a little bit to see how they think about realtors. But ultimately, here's how I work. And one of the things I suggest is that we have I'd like to commit my time to you when you call, to make you one of my highest priorities. But I can really probably only do that if I have some commitment from you to make me a high priority. Because you can just wander around out there and call people off their signs. Explain every single time you call them why you're looking for a house and all that kind of a thing. Or you can explain it to me one time, and I will make note of what you're looking for, and we'll just agree to work together. Tara Levinson's words were, I just asked you on this buyer brokerage agreement right here, I just asked you not to cheat on me for 90 days. That's literally how she puts it, or she teaches her people to put it. This is just a form that says we're going to be loyal to each other for a period of time.
This form is good for 90 days.
It's however long you want to
Is
make
there
it.
a place on there, the date? How many?
Show the buyer brokerage agreement.
Yeah, let me go to the buyer brokerage agreement and show you that. That's the form that actually is the agreement. This is just basically saying that there is one.
Hey, Don, which one of those do you click if you sell a FSBO and use a compensation agreement? I come up the other day. We used others.
Yeah, I don't know where it would just be. It would be under buyer. Let's see if it's in here.
No, the one you were just on, disclosure brokerage duties.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of boxes at the top. And you have to check which one's appropriate. And this came up the other day.
Oh, for compensation?
And so I did sell a FSBO with a compensation agreement. I just did other.
Yeah, you probably just click there and put other in here, or put compensation agreement.
That's
if you want to.
That's what we gave to FSBO, and then we had the buyer sign the sales agreement.
Yeah, that's probably right. Yeah, because you don't have a loyalty to that FSBO.
And we don't
you don't have a listing. So that gets, I'm getting off in the woods here with you. But all right, you wanted me to go to the buyer broker agreement. Well, we're in listing documents. So we're probably not going to find it there. So let's go to buyer contract forms. And let's just disclosure to seller of buyer broker duties. That's the same thing we saw a minute ago, except it's what I just had on the screen, except this one would be, it's the same. Let's look here, or let me just go up here and see if it's called that. Brokerage. No. Usually you can just go through here and let me just put buyer in there and see if I can narrow it down. But up here in the search bar, B-U-Y-E-R, I'm looking for the form that is, that's the duties, buyer review, estimate cost of buyers. So those are all the forms that have the word buyer in them, and that one's not one of them. So let's just scroll down here for an hour and see if we can find that form. It's not in there. That's just great. They have a folder that's got buyer on it. It's not in here. So I always, like I say, I just go to the Keller Williams Green Meadow folder or section, wherever it is here.
Down a little bit, I think.
Right here.
There we go. That's the-
Keller Williams Green Meadow just got them all in it.
Has everything.
And so that's where I go because all these others just don't have everything in them you need. Now, let me see if I can find it here. Buyer brokerage service agreement. That's what it's called. So I click on it. And then this comes up. This is the listing agreement for a buyer. And it basically describes the purpose and all. But right down here, your question is, how long does this last? Well, go to section 3, duration of the agreement. This agreement is entered into on whatever day this is, and it shall expire on whatever day you, like she says, 90 days is what she's saying, but you can put 180 in there, you can put 30, you can put 10, you know. But this would be the form you use. Like I said, 43% of the people across the country are actually getting one of these that actually sell a house and close it. So that means that the 64, whatever, 60-some% of them are not using this, and they're getting there. And they're just rolling the old dice, hoping everybody will be loyal to each other from the start to the finish. And they are being for the most part. But ultimately, we have it every year where people come in and say, those son of a guns, I showed them 20 houses and I showed them another 20 houses. And then they went and bought new construction just kind of in an area nearby where I was showing them. They happened to drive, we drove by, they looked out there, and there's new houses being built. They went back later on because they were just curious, drove in there, and house was open, flags flapping. They went in, the builder standing there, hey, how do you do? And ultimately, you don't have this agreement signed, and so they don't owe you anything.
So I have a couple of questions.
Okay?
So why don't you?
Our lead, Christy, who's basically runs that side and I run the listing side, believes that our people's sales ability and experience should make people loyal to them. If you haven't had loyalty, you haven't earned it anyway. Sign that piece of paper, it's gonna make a difference. That's what she thinks.
Okay.
And that's right with Terry.
I don't use it yet because I'm still in my warm market and the people I'm talking to are friends.
Okay.
And so if they choose somebody else over me, I don't want it to like ruin our friendship.
Okay.
So I'm just going along with loyalty. And once I get outside of my warm market, I might use it.
And then what does this do if they do go off and buy?
Well, you then can go back and say, well, gosh, I think you owe me some compensation. So it might be that's the uncomfortable conversation you have to have with your friend. So it comes down to how loyal are they to you? And if they're close friends, they'll probably be loyal to you. If they're referrals, they'll probably be loyal to you. But if you just met them at an open house, they don't know you from Adam. They just walked in and now you've just met them, and they're saying, let's show me some houses. There's no loyalty there yet in terms of relationship. You may start to feel obligated after you show them a few houses, but money is a funny thing. Comes to money, and this builder says, listen, you use that realtor, it's this price. If you don't use them, it's this price. They say, I like Kristen quite a bit, but not. I don't like her. I don't like her $5,000 that much yet. So that's where all of a sudden their decision making, they can justify things, even though they kind of feel bad, but they can start justifying. Or they find a for sale owner. They're just driving down the road or in the area where they're looking around, and there's an owner trying to sell a house. Well, we can work with them. Grant said we can just check up there and get a compensation agreement and call that owner and say, hey, would you work with us if we brought a buyer? Most of the time they'll say yes, but ultimately they may not call us. So as part of that conversation in that room, let's see what your must-haves are. Let me help you understand how I'd like you to work with me. We decide to work with each other. All right. If you see a for sale owner, I'd love for you just to get the name and number off the sign and call me. Don't approach them. Just call me because I'm working for you, but I want to investigate what the situation is and see if I can learn, what the dynamics are and make sure there's compensation in it for us so that you don't have to pay it. Or it's new construction. You're driving up and down and you'll see an area you'd love. I'd love for you to holler at me and say, hey, I'm over here in XYZ neighborhood, kind of looking around. then I want to make sure I've got business cards in your hands so that you can lease, if nothing else. There's an open house. I'm not saying you can't stop it, but announce yourself and say, I'm working with these people. I won't be buying anything unless they're involved. Is it okay if I look at this house? I mean, we need to have some coaching in that, around that table in that room, so that when it does, or if it does come up, they just know, here are the rules of the road. But if you've got this thing, it's kind of like Grant said, this doesn't guarantee you you're getting paid. Still.
It just kind of makes them think twice about
it. It forces you to have the conversation about loyalty. And at the end of the day, if you've got somebody that's written, I will be loyal to you between this date and this date, that's a different kind of prospect than somebody that says, no, I don't think I can do that. Then you got to ask yourself, how loyal am I going to be to them? If I got somebody that's signed this thing that says, I'm going to look at houses at 2 o'clock on Saturday, and somebody that didn't sign it calls you and says, I'm going to look at houses at 2 o'clock on Saturday, which of them are you going to be working with?
One who's buying house price sales.
Oh, God. I got him in the room again. I keep forgetting. I mean, you know, we got all kinds of influences here in the real estate. But anyway, your answer to your question, how long, right there, you just put in whatever you want to put in there. But the compensation, there's several options. One of them down here, just by acceptance of the amount of compensation offered by the listing broker. So you're not even saying I'm obligating you to pay me anything. I'll just take what the listing brokers are offering if it's listed. So that's one of the options. Pardon me?
It says order the seller.
Yeah. And then you got a couple of other options up here. B is the one you'll probably prefer. But that's basically is obligating him a little bit to some compensation. Buyer shall pay the broker at closing an amount equal to X number of dollars in the gross selling price. Buyer shall receive a credit toward the payment of the broker's compensation in an amount equal to any payment made to the broker by any other broker to the seller or the seller.
If they break the contract, that's what that's saying? Or no?
No,
That's just,
just period.
That's saying you're gonna get 3%, and if the other side's paying 2.5, you're gonna pay half as much.
That's what that one says. We're agreeing to 3%. But if they're only offering 2.5, you're absorbing the other half. So let's look at properties and what the compensation is, if it matters any. And but that's the one I prefer if you're going to have to pick one of them. But B, however, C is less, you know, you're not putting any responsibility on them at all for paying you anything. It's just that whatever they are paying is coming from the seller, but at least let's agree to that. If you don't have the document at all, fine. Let's just see what happens. Which houses you want to see? Here are the 5 houses that match what your need, your 5 must-haves are. Let's go take a look at them. And let's take a look and see. It'll tell us down here how much they're offering in compensation. I'm not spending much time on that, but it matters because I'm not doing this as a hobby. And so if you've got somebody that's doing it as a hobby, well, you maybe don't have somebody that's maybe a level of professionalism you might need at the end of this road. So,
I'm sorry. It has a lot of its own. So if I have someone in the office and we're talking about this, are you having them fill this out right there on your computer?
Yeah.
As your.
Or we might just go out and look at 1 or 2 houses and then agree to work together. You know, a question of when you do it. But I think the conversation is useful, whether you use the form or not. I think it would be useful just to know what the degree of loyalty, scale of 1 to 100, what degree of loyalty do I think I have here? And if it's friends, warm. Leslie's using the word warm. That's people that know you, like you, trust you already. You've worked with them maybe at the optometrist or what have you already. That's a warm lead. But my brother sold his houses 3 times before he ever called me to list one, you know. It was my fault because he's on the north side of town. He just thought I didn't want to deal with stuff on the north side of town. He was wrong. But I moved him, and the 3rd time I moved him, coming down the ramp with that refrigerator, I said, Mike, don't you dare sell this house on Salem without calling me. And he did. He called me because he knew he should.
So we have a conversation. You still call the form. And the conversation we have that Christy basically taught all of us is the law's changed. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, talking to a couple or whoever. The law's changed in terms of broker's responsibilities, broker's duties, and agent responsibility. Used to be an agent was a sub-agent of whoever listed the property. So my fiscal responsibility was to the sub. They've changed that law now, so that you understand, I'll be working for you and it won't cost you anything. They changed the law so that I can represent you specifically. Okay, our team is gonna represent you in these sales. So we're gonna look out for your best interest the whole time. If you go to the listing agent, they're probably not gonna do that. Their fiscal responsibility is to the seller. So any sale house you see, any for sale by any of that, our responsibility is to you. So our first task is gonna be to take care of you as best we can. So always come to us. If you see a builder, the builder's not gonna protect you. He's trying to sell you a house and everything as possibly can. Come to us, our job is to protect you. And again, it won't cost you a dime. So that's the discussion we have. This agreement lines that out and then have Mark see. I mean, it just says, this is what this is about. It's an agreement that lines this out.
Okay.
That's what we would use, but we just don't do the next step. We don't have to sign it because, A, we know it's not defensible anyway. I mean, if it comes down to it, you're gonna go to mediation, they're gonna say it's recurring costs, who's the recurring costs, that's all there's to it. So everything else becomes mute.
So you're not gonna get your money.
Right.
Okay.
Well, you got a little more of a leg to stand on if you have it versus if you don't.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
can argue, we have a contractual agreement, it's a binding agreement here. At least let's have the conversation. You can negotiate a little better than you don't have. But at the end of the day,
I'm not saying.
Rand's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More than
It
anything.
sounds like, well, and if you did try to pursue that with that person because they went somewhere else, that kind of puts a bad taste in their mouth for you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you're not gonna get referrals or you're not gonna get a good.
that's right.
Here's the thing, if you go back to them and say, I know you probably didn't realize this, but yada, 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 they'll feel bad and they'll try to find you a client if you're nice, if they like you.
Yeah.
They'll try to find somebody to replace themselves, maybe their kid down the line or something. But if you're kind of snooty about it and you owe me money, then they're gonna be like, yeah, like I'm never gonna use you. And we found that people share good news once and bad news 1,000 times.
Yeah.
So if they're not happy with you, you can tell every single person in it. So for us, it just doesn't make any sense. And we've lost deals that they called us and said, oh, we went into this builder's house and he said this, and so we just went ahead and signed up with his guy. Okay. I mean, wish you hadn't, we could have represented you, and then about 3 weeks later, you usually get the call, they're not putting in the backyard of my house. Well, we try to explain to you that if you use us, we'll make sure you're covered. Why don't you ask them if you've got blinds, a fence, or a garage door opener either? That's already signed the contract, big dummy.
Yeah. So, I mean, over time, you're the CEO of this operation. You'll set the standards to some degree. The company's going to set some standards, like what, if you're listing a house, what you're going to offer the selling agent, that's company policy, and it's 3%, and that's just policy. But it's not concrete anywhere, it's just our policy. Other than that, though, you know what your standard is. How overpriced will I take a house? Will I require somebody to commit to working with me, or will I just roll the dice and see? Plenty of people, like I said, more people don't do that agreement than do. I didn't intend to get off on that, but that you asked that question. And we spent 25 minutes on where's the blank. Found the blank, and now we've had it, but it's important information for you to understand. I appreciate your questions because that means to me you're following the conversation enough to be able to ask them and placing yourself mentally in those moments where then if I'm sitting there, how do I approach that? And you don't have to approach it, or you can use a piece of it where it basically lets them off the hook except for whatever the seller's willing to pay you and accept whatever that is. So there's any variety of those reasons, but that's not required. And most of the time in the country, they're not doing it. My Ignite class teaching, the Ignite material says you should. So I'm just conveying what the Keller Williams International people think is best practices.
This is the best realtor in this state.
Yeah. So when I hope you'll come tomorrow to the awards banquet and meet and just see. They're pretty ordinary people, about your height. Hair maybe a little small, maybe a little shorter. She looks pretty ordinary to me. But her and her husband, Peter, 500 closings or something very close to that last year in her team of people. But that's a company in a company. There are lots of companies that do not sell 500 houses in a year in this state, probably most of them. So ultimately, she's just part of a company. It's just her team of people. But there'll be 20 people walking across that stage with her. So she's not doing it by herself, but it's an amazing accomplishment, but it is their standard. That's my point. That group standard, none of those buyer specialists will go out there without that signed in that bunch, because that's what they've established.
By the way, there's a leather bound book.
Their form.
It's a buyer's packet. They pick them up as they walk out the door. It's red, buyers, something or other, and it is leather bound book. It's an actual book.
Well, you know, I had an open house with Brenda yesterday, and she makes books from her house. That, I've never even seen such a thing, but she has her sign-in sheet, and then she has a buyer's book that she makes at her house. It's a hardback book.
Is it a buyer's book?
It was, she was taking it to a buyer, and it was full of information, questions and stuff, but it was a hardbound book, and she had it embossed on the front. She makes them out of her house.
Yeah.
I mean, that's in my head, but very impressive.
Impressive. That's what we're looking to do. And how do we separate? So in all of this, along the way, we're looking to differentiate ourselves. There's 300, 200 people in this operation alone. And then in the city of Oklahoma City, 3,500 people that are selling real estate. So how are you differentiating yourself from people? And Brenda's, this one, Tara's over there with the leather bound book. Brenda's got her own thing. So over time, she's developed. She didn't get that done the first week, I promise you.
Yeah.
Probably wasn't the first 10 years. But over time, she's created this piece that she doesn't have to build. She just prints it, puts it in, and she's differentiating herself. Where you're saying, I saw her operate an open house, and I was very impressed with what she did. That's the point of it. Is to separate yourself from a whole pile of people in some way, and cause people to say, well, I think I'd use them if I was going to use somebody. Why? Well, because look here, some of the work. It's just beautiful work. And yet beautiful work doesn't sell houses sometimes, But, all right, we run ourselves out of time. Question.
I've got a problem that I need you and Randy to help me with, so we can do it after class maybe.
She's got,
She can learn more.
let's see if anybody else comes in here. And we'll go until somebody else does, because we're looking for the 11 o'clock hours in other groups possibly. But if nobody else comes in, we can keep going.
So I have clients that are friends that are moving to Norman, and they wanted to look themselves, go to open houses, blah, 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 and if they see one, they'll call me. And so that's what happened yesterday. They had all Saturday, they had all these open, Sunday, they did all these open houses. There was one they wanted to see. I made an appointment Saturday night. They came over, they didn't like the one that I showed them, and they were just giddy. We saw this one, we want you to go with us over there, $475,000, blah, blah, blah. So we go over, and as soon as we get out of the car, they're trying to sell me on this house. And it is gorgeous property, 2.5 acres, but the house looked, as soon as I saw it, I was like, this is not well built. I mean, in my mind, it didn't look like the other houses in the neighborhood. And so I was just saying to myself, okay, I gotta not get in this euphoric train that they're trying to get me in. Look at this house like I normally would. I've never seen it. I didn't have anything on it. They gave me the realtor.com open house sheet was all I had. And they're like, what do you think? What do you think? I'm just like, whoa. So I start looking around, and they want me to come inside. So I went around the outside first, because that's what I typically do for myself. And I see this roof issue on the back of the house. And I'm standing there looking at it. And the husband comes up and he goes, what are you looking at? And I said, I'm looking at this roof. And he goes, oh my gosh, good catch. What is that? And I was like, I don't know, but I think there's an issue that we need to look at. So we go in the house, and the wife was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And they're a cash buyer. They want to make an offer.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked them out of it, making it yesterday, because I was uncomfortable with the way the roof looked. If they're not.
Why?
Well, I've got some pictures to show you.
Yeah.
Inspectors are for.
But they're a cash buyer.
You still do inspections,
I know,
and you still can get out there.
I know, but should I have written an offer yesterday?
Probably.
Absolutely.
Now here, I got to get you out of Lori White world.
Yeah.
Lori over there sees a dead gum piece of dust, and that thing's filthy.
Wasn't that?
I know,
Scary.
but it was, I asked Lori, how are you buying this? No. Well, then what? They set the standard as far as what's acceptable, not you. Now, you got these
But you went
safety valves.
inside, and you could see where the tape and bed come off. They patched it. There's this big span into a 2-story.
Leslie, It's fixable.
It's not yours.
I know it's fixable, but how much and
That's what the inspection's gonna do.
that's why I asked on group me this morning. I need a structural inspector.
Yeah, I can give you one, but I'm thinking, here's the deal. When somebody wants something, we probably ought to at least help them get it, but protect them along the way, which our standard forms allow for inspections. And in the sole opinion of the buyer, they can get out of it for any reason, including that one.
During that period.
During that window of time, so we can protect them. Now, it all comes down to how good a deal is this? So if they love the place, she loves it, whatever.
I hadn't even got to run comps on it.
Yeah, that's good. That's part of what we do. In order for me to write something up, maybe we ought to take a look and see if it, have a price match.
$475, we love it. We're a cash buyer.
Why are you so hesitant?
What?
Because it looked like it wasn't structurally sound.
Okay, I think why you're hesitant is because you didn't find it.
No,
To be
it
honest
wasn't.
with you.
No, seriously.
When you got out, you drove up, you weren't even there, and you said, this house is as nice as the others. So the